Commander Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge of the space station Vanguard. He was drinking his morning coffee and looking at the daily reports. Space was quiet today, just like most days. The stars looked peaceful through the big windows. Of the station, Jake had been working on the orbital station for 3 years now. His job was to watch for signals from deep space. Most of the time, nothing interesting happened. He would read reports, check equipment, and count the hours until his shift ended. Communications officer Lisa Parker was at her station nearby. She was a young woman with short brown hair and smart eyes. Lisa had joined the space program 2 years ago. She was good at her job and always stayed alert, even when things were boring. The morning started like any other day. Jake read through the routine reports while Lisa checked the long-range scanners. The coffee was hot and bitter, just the way Jake liked it. Outside the station, Earth looked blue and beautiful in the distance. Then everything changed. A loud beeping sound came from Lisa's station. She looked at her screens with surprise. Her hands moved quickly over the controls as she tried to understand what she was seeing. "Commander," Lisa called out. Her voice sounded worried. "I'm getting something strange here." Jake put down his coffee cup and walked over to her station. "What kind of something?" Lisa pointed at her screen. "It's a transmission, sir. But it's not from any human ship or station. The signal pattern is completely different from anything I've seen before." Jake looked at the strange lines and numbers on the screen. He had seen many different types of signals during his years in space, but this one was unlike anything he knew. The patterns were too complex to be natural, but too alien to be human. "How far away is it coming from?" Jake asked. Lisa worked on her computer for a few seconds. "The signal is very weak, sir. I think it's coming from very far away. Maybe from outside our solar system." Jake felt his heart beat faster. In all his years of watching space, they had never received a signal from another star system. Earth had been trying to contact alien life for hundreds of years, but they had never gotten an answer. "Can you clean up the signal?" Jake asked. "Make it clearer?" Lisa nodded and started working. Her fingers moved fast over the controls. She used different filters and programs to make the signal stronger. Slowly, the strange patterns on her screen became cleaner. "It's definitely artificial, sir," Lisa said. "This was made by intelligent beings. And Commander, I think it's a distress call." Jake felt cold suddenly. A distress call from aliens would change everything. He watched as Lisa worked to make the signal even clearer. The patterns on the screen were starting to look like language. "I'm going to try to translate it," Lisa said. "The computer might be able to find patterns in the signal." The translation computer was one of the most advanced systems on the station. It could understand hundreds of human languages and was designed to help with alien contact if it ever happened. Jake had never thought they would actually need to use it. After 10 minutes, the computer started to show results. Words appeared on the screen, but they were broken and hard to read. Lisa kept working to make them clearer. Finally, Lisa looked up at Jake with wide eyes. "Commander, you need to hear this." She pressed a button, and a voice came through the speakers. It was clearly not human. The voice sounded scared and desperate. "This is Research Vessel Harmony of the Zolani Republic," the voice said through the translation system. "We are under attack by the Korthik Empire. Our colony ships are being destroyed. They are targeting our civilians. Please, if anyone receives this message, we need help." Jake and Lisa looked at each other in shock. They were hearing the voice of an alien being asking for help. The message continued. "The Korthik show no mercy to anyone. They kill those who fight and make slaves of those who surrender. Our women and children are dying. We have tried to escape, but their ships are too fast and too strong. We don't have weapons to fight them." Lisa's hands were shaking as she recorded everything. This was the most important moment in human history. "We are a peaceful people," the alien voice went on. "We have never hurt anyone. We only wanted to explore space and learn about the universe. But the Korthak destroy everything they find. They take our people as slaves and strip our worlds of everything valuable." The signal was getting weaker. Lisa worked hard to keep it. "Clear. Our coordinates are attached to this message," the voice said. "We don't have much time left. The Korthak ships are closing in on our last colony ship. If there is anyone out there who can help us, please come quickly. We will not survive much longer." The message ended with static. Lisa tried to get more, but the signal was gone. Jake stood in silence for a moment. He had just heard aliens asking Earth for help. Real aliens who were being attacked by other aliens. It was like something from a science fiction movie, but it was really happening. "Lisa, get me Captain Helen Brooks right now," Jake said. "Use the emergency channel." Lisa nodded and started making the call. Captain Brooks was the head of the Earth Defense Corps on the planet below. If anyone would know what to do, it would be her. While they waited for the call to connect, Jake looked at the coordinates the aliens had sent. They were 17 light years away from Earth. That was very far, but not impossible to reach with the new quantum drive ships that Earth had built. "Captain Brooks is on the line, sir," Lisa said. Jake took a deep breath. "Captain Brooks, this is Commander Morrison on Vanguard Station. We have a code red situation. You need to hear this immediately." Jake played the alien message for Captain Brooks. He could hear her breathing on the other end of the line as she listened to the desperate plea for help. When the message ended, there was silence for a long moment. "Commander, are you certain this signal is real?" Captain Brooks asked. "Yes. Ma'am, we've checked everything twice. This is a genuine distress call from an alien species called the Zilani. They're being attacked by something called the Korthak Empire." Captain Brooks was quiet for another moment. Jake could almost hear her thinking. "Commander, lock down that station. No one talks about this until I get there. I'm coming up on the next shuttle. We need to take this to Earth Command immediately." "Yes, ma'am." "And Commander, good work. You and Officer Parker just made the most important discovery in human history." As Jake ended the call, he looked out at the stars again. They didn't look peaceful anymore. Somewhere out there, people were dying and calling for help. And for the first time in human history, Earth had the technology and the power to answer that call. The question was, what would humanity do about it? Captain Helen Brooks arrived at Vanguard Station 3 hours after the alien message was received. She was a tall woman with gray hair and hard eyes. Brooks had been a soldier for 25 years and had seen many wars on Earth, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. She listened to the alien distress call 5 times. Each time her face became more serious. When the message ended for the last time, she stood up and looked at Commander Morrison and Officer Parker. "This changes everything," she said quietly. "We are no longer alone in the universe, and someone out there needs our help." Brooks contacted Earth Command immediately. Within 1 hour, every important leader on Earth knew about the message. The President of the United Earth Government called an emergency meeting. Military commanders from every nation gathered in the war room deep under the capital city. General Robert Clay was the head of all Earth's military forces. He was an old man who had fought in 3 wars. When he heard the alien message, he did not hesitate. "We're going to help them," he announced to the room full of leaders. "Earth has never ignored a call for help, and we won't start now." Some people in the room were worried. Senator Linda White stood up and spoke. "General, we don't know anything about these aliens or their enemies. This could be a trap. We might be walking into a war we can't win." General Clay looked at her with cold eyes. "Senator, innocent people are dying. Children are being killed. That's all I need to know." The President agreed with the general. Within 6 hours, The largest military force in human history was being prepared. Ships from every nation on Earth were called into service. The best soldiers, pilots, and officers were given orders to report for duty immediately. Admiral Peter Hayes was chosen to lead the mission. He was 50 years old and had commanded Earth's space fleet for 10 years. Hayes was known for being smart in battle and caring about his soldiers. When he was told about the mission, he accepted without question. How many ships can we send? Hayes asked General Clay. Everything we have that can make the journey, Clay replied. 230 ships. That includes battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels. We're also sending 40,000 Marines, Hayes nodded. It was the biggest fleet Earth had ever assembled. But he wondered if it would be enough. Colonel Maria Santos was put in charge of the ground forces. She was a tough woman who had led soldiers in battles all over Earth. Santos had never lost a fight, and she did not plan to start now. When she heard about the alien civilians being killed, her eyes filled with anger. How long until we can leave? Santos asked. The fleet will be ready in 18 hours, Hayes replied. We'll use the quantum drive ships. They can make the journey in about 20 hours. While the military prepared, scientists worked to learn everything they could about the aliens. Dr. Kevin Walsh was Earth's best expert on alien life. He studied all the information from the Zilani message. The Zilani seemed to be peaceful people, Dr. Walsh told the military commanders. They call themselves a republic, which means they probably have a government like ours. They mentioned research ships and colonies, so they explore space like we do. What about their enemies? Asked Major Tony Rivera, who had planned the battle tactics. The Korthak Empire sounds like a military dictatorship, Walsh continued. They conquer other peoples and make them slaves. They seem to be much more advanced in warfare than the Zilani. Admiral Hayes listened carefully. Doctor, do we know how strong the Korthak military is? No, Admiral. The Zilani didn't give us those details. We're going in blind. This worried some of the officers, but Hayes was not concerned. He had studied human military history. Humans had always been good at adapting to new enemies and finding ways to win. The fleet gathered at the orbital shipyards above Earth. It was an amazing sight. Warships of every size floated in formation. The biggest ship was the battleship Retribution, which would be Hayes' command vessel. It was 2 kilometers long and carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Captain Danny Cooper commanded the destroyer Warhammer. He was a young officer who had graduated first in his class from the military academy. Cooper was excited about the mission, but also nervous. This would be his first real battle. Sir, what are our orders when we reach the alien system? Cooper asked Hayes during the final briefing. Hayes looked around the room at all his ship commanders. They were good people who had devoted their lives to protecting others. Now they would do the same thing on a galactic scale. Our primary mission is to save the Zilani civilians, Hayes said. But we also need to send a message to this Korthak Empire. They need to understand that Earth will not tolerate the murder of innocent people. Captain Jennifer Lane commanded the cruiser Thunderbolt. She was one of the most experienced combat pilots in the fleet. Lane had fought space pirates in the outer colonies and always won. Admiral, what if the Korthak have more ships than us? She asked. Hayes smiled grimly. Then we'll have to be smarter and tougher than them. Remember, we come from Earth. Our planet tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and natural disasters. We learned to fight and never give up. That's our advantage. The room was quiet as the officers thought about Hayes' words. Humans had indeed survived on one of the most dangerous planets known. Earth had hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, and thousands of deadly animals. Every human alive was descended from people who had learned to fight for survival every single day. Communications Officer Beth Adams spoke up. Sir, we've been monitoring space for more signals from the Zilani. We haven't heard anything since. The first message, this was bad news. It might mean the Zilani were already dead or captured. But Hayes refused to give up hope. We leave in 4 hours, he announced. Check your ships and your crews. Make sure everyone understands what we're doing. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for all the innocent people in the galaxy who can't protect themselves. As the meeting ended, the officers returned to their ships to make final preparations. Weapons were loaded, engines were tested, and soldiers prepared their equipment. In the cargo bays, Marines checked their armor and weapons. These were men and women who had trained their whole lives for war. Colonel Santos walked among her troops as they prepared. She saw the determination in their eyes. These soldiers understood that they were about to make history. They would be the first humans to fight aliens, and they were ready. Remember your training, Santos told them. Fight smart, fight together, and never leave anyone behind. We're going to show these Korthek what happens when they mess with innocent people. 4 hours later, the Earth fleet activated their quantum drives and disappeared into space. They were heading toward a distant star system where aliens were. Dying and calling for help. Earth had answered that call with the fury of a species that had never learned to back down from a fight. The Earth fleet dropped out of quantum drive at the edge of the Zilani star system. What Admiral Hayes saw through the main screen made his blood run cold. The space around the alien planets was full of burning ships and floating debris, massive. Alien warships hung in space like dark metal mountains. They were firing their weapons at helpless civilian ships trying to escape. The attacking vessels were ugly and angular, covered in spikes and armor plates. These had to be the Korthek ships. My God, whispered Communications Officer Beth Adams as she stared at the tactical display. They're slaughtering them. Hayes watched in horror as a Korthek ship fired on a small escape pod. The tiny vessel exploded in a flash of light. Inside, that pod had been alien families just trying to survive. Sir, I'm reading at least 60 Korthek warships, reported Navigation Officer Ryan Stone. They're 3 times our size and have much heavier armor. Hayes studied the enemy fleet. The Korthek ships were indeed huge, but they moved slowly through space. They seemed to focus on destroying defenseless targets rather than military tactics. All ships, this is Admiral Hayes, he announced to the fleet. Battle stations. We're going in. Captain Danny Cooper aboard the destroyer Warhammer felt his heart pounding. Sir, they outnumber us 3-1. Shouldn't we call for reinforcements? Hayes looked at another escape pod being hunted down by alien fighters. There's no time. Captain, people are dying right now. The Korthek fleet was spread across the system, attacking different planets and colony ships. Their commander, war leader Vexthan, was aboard the largest ship near the main planet. He was a massive creature with thick gray skin and 4 arms. Vexthan had conquered 12 different species in his career. Report, Vexthan growled to his tactical officer. The Zilani resistance has been crushed, war leader. We are now collecting slaves from the surviving population. Their ships cannot fight us. Vexthan was pleased. The Zilani had been easier to defeat than expected. Their technology was advanced, but they had no military experience. Soon this system would belong to the Korthek Empire. Then the tactical officer made a confused sound. War leader, I'm detecting unknown ships at the system edge. They're moving toward us at high speed. Vexthan looked at the display with interest. Another species trying to help the Zilani? How many ships? Over 200, sir, but they're much smaller than our vessels. Vexthan laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. Probably another weak species like the Zilani. Destroy them quickly, so we can continue our work. The Korthek ships began turning toward the approaching Earth fleet, but they moved slowly, like giant beasts in space. The human ships were much faster and more agile. Admiral Hayes had divided his fleet into several attack groups. Captain Lane, take your cruisers and hit their left flank. Captain Cooper, destroyers will target their fighters. Colonel Santos, prepare boarding parties for any ships we disable. The battle began when the Earthships came into weapons range. Captain Jennifer Lane aboard the cruiser Thunderbolt fired the first shot. Her railgun sent a metal projectile at incredible speed toward a Korthik battleship. The round punched through the alien ship's armor like paper. The Korthik had never faced kinetic weapons moving that fast. Their shields were designed to stop energy beams, not solid projectiles. Direct hit, shouted Lane's weapons officer. We've penetrated their armor. Across the battlefield, other human ships opened fire. Fusion missiles streaked through space toward Korthak vessels. When they hit, the alien ships erupted in balls of nuclear fire. War leader Vexthan watched in shock as 3 of his ships exploded in the first minute of battle. What kind of weapons are these creatures using? His tactical officer was panicking. Sir, they're firing solid projectiles at extreme velocity. Our shields can't stop them. And those are fusion warheads, not simple explosives. The human fleet attacked like a pack of wolves. They were smaller than the Korthak ships, but they moved with deadly precision. While the aliens tried to turn their massive vessels, the human ships darted around them, striking weak points and disappearing before return fire could hit them. Captain Cooper led his destroyers against the Korthak fighters. The alien pilots had never faced opponents who flew like humans. Earth pilots had learned to fly by fighting each other in countless air battles. They knew every trick and maneuver possible. Fox 3 missile away, Cooper called as he fired at an alien fighter. The missile struck its target, and the enemy craft spun out of control before exploding. The space battle was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The Korthik fought like bullies who had never met real resistance. They expected enemies to flee or surrender. But humans had evolved on a world where running away meant death. Major Tony Rivera coordinated the fleet's tactics from the flagship. He had studied every human military victory in history. Now he used those lessons against an alien enemy. Admiral, recommend we focus fire on their command ship, Rivera suggested. If we cut off their leadership, the rest might panic. Hayes agreed. All heavy ships, target the largest Korthik vessel. Let's end this quickly. The battleship Retribution and 5 cruisers turned their weapons on Vexthan's command ship. The combined firepower was devastating. Railgun rounds and fusion missiles hammered the alien vessel from all sides. Vexthan felt his ship shaking as human weapons tore through the hull. Return fire, destroy them. But the Korthak weapons were designed for destroying helpless targets, not fighting mobile warships. Their energy beams missed the fast-moving human ships, while their missiles were too slow to catch them. Colonel Santos was preparing her Marines for boarding actions when she saw something that made her blood boil. On the tactical screen, a Korthak ship was firing on a Zelani hospital ship marked with medical symbols. Admiral, requesting permission to board that ship attacking the hospital, Santos said with cold fury. Granted, Colonel. Show them what happens when they target medical personnel. Santos led 200 Marines in assault shuttles toward the Korthak ship. They landed in the enemy vessel's hangar bay and immediately met resistance. The Korthak soldiers were large and strong, but they had never fought humans before. Marines had trained for combat in every possible environment. They fought in zero gravity, in toxic atmospheres, and in close quarters where their smaller size was an advantage. The Korthik found themselves facing opponents who never stopped attacking, no matter how bad the situation looked. Move, move, move! Santos shouted as her troops advanced through the alien ship. Secure the prisoner holds. Find those Zelani civilians. The Marines fought through deck after deck, facing desperate Korthik defenders. But human soldiers had something the aliens lacked. They were fighting to save innocent lives. not just to conquer territory. Within 2 hours, the battle was over. Every Korthik ship had been destroyed or captured. Not a single alien vessel escaped to tell their empire what had happened. Admiral Hayes stood on his bridge, looking at the wreckage floating in space. The mighty Korthak fleet that had terrorized this peaceful system was gone. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Adams, "we're receiving transmissions from the Zilani survivors. They're thanking us for saving them." Hayes nodded grimly. The battle was won, but he knew this was just the beginning. Earth had announced itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they had come with fury. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Hayes stood in the main meeting room of his flagship. Around the table sat the surviving Korthak prisoners and several Zilani leaders who had been rescued from the enemy ships. The contrast between the two alien species was striking. The Zilani were thin and graceful, with large eyes and gentle faces. They moved carefully and spoke in soft voices. The Korthak were thick and brutal-looking, with gray skin and fierce expressions. Even as prisoners, they glared at everyone with hatred. Dr. Kevin Walsh served as translator for the meeting. He had been working day and night to understand both alien languages. The conversation that followed would change the course of galactic history. "Tell us about the Korthak Empire," Hazes said to the prisoners. "How many worlds do they control?" The highest ranking Korthik prisoner was Sub-Commander Grixtok. He was smaller than War Leader Vexton had been, but still twice the size of a human. At first he refused to speak. Colonel Santos stepped forward. "Commander, we found the slave pens on your ships. We saw what you did to innocent families. You can talk to us here, or we can send you back to Earth for trial." Grixtok looked at the human soldiers with confusion. In Korthak culture, prisoners were either killed or enslaved. The idea of a trial was foreign to him. "The Empire controls over 1,000 worlds," he finally said. "Our fleets number in the millions of ships. You have won one small battle, but you cannot defeat us all." The Zilani leader, an elderly being named Elder Thalvin, spoke up. "Admiral Hayes, you do not understand what you have done. The Korthak Empire has terrorized this region of space for over 200 years. No one has ever defeated them in battle." Hayes looked at the alien elder. That was before they met humans. Dr. Walsh had been studying the information taken from captured Korthak computers. What he found was disturbing. The Empire had conquered dozens of peaceful species. They strip-mined entire worlds and kept billions of beings as slaves. "Admiral," Walsh reported, "the Korthak Empire is essentially a military dictatorship built on conquest and slavery. They have no allies, only subjects and enemies. Every species in this region of space either serves them or hides from them." Captain Sally Morgan, the fleet's intelligence officer, had been questioning more prisoners. She brought even worse news to Hayes. "Sir, according to the Korthak records, there are slave camps throughout their territory. Some hold millions of beings from conquered worlds. The conditions are terrible." Hayes felt his anger growing. The Korthak were not just conquerors, they were monsters who built their civilization on the suffering of others. "What's the location of their main military bases?" Hayes asked. Sub-Commander Grixtok laughed harshly. "You think you can attack the Empire directly? You have maybe 200 ships. We have fleets of 10,000 ships at our major worlds." Hayes looked at the alien prisoner with cold eyes. "We destroyed your entire fleet here without losing a single ship. What makes you think your other fleets will do better?" For the first time, Grixtok looked uncertain. The human fleet had indeed crushed the Korthak forces with shocking ease. But the Empire was vast and powerful. Hayes made a decision that would reshape the galaxy. He contacted Earth Command and requested reinforcements. But he also did something else. He sent messages to every known species in the region. The message was simple and direct. "This is Admiral Hayes of the Earth Defense Fleet. The Korthak attack on the Zelani Republic has been defeated. Their fleet is destroyed. Any species suffering under Korthak rule should contact us immediately. Earth is now actively opposing the Korthak Empire." The response was overwhelming. Within days, the human fleet received hundreds of messages from different worlds. Some were from species asking for help. Others were from resistance groups already fighting the Empire. A few were from Korthak allies warning Earth to back down. Hayes ignored the threats and focused on the calls for help. He divided his fleet into smaller task forces and sent them to different systems where people needed rescue. Captain Jennifer Lane took her cruiser group to a system where Korthak ships were attacking mining colonies. She arrived to find enemy forces preparing to enslave the local population. "This is Captain Lane of the Earth vessel Thunderbolt," she broadcast to the Korthak ships. "You have one chance to surrender. Leave this system immediately or be destroyed." The Korthak commander laughed at the human transmission. His force included 5 heavy cruisers and 20 smaller ships. He thought one human cruiser group would be easy to defeat. He was wrong. Lane's ships tore through the Korthak force in 30 minutes. The aliens had not learned from the defeated Zelani, and they paid the price. Similar battles happened across the region. Human task forces appeared wherever Korthak ships were attacking civilians. Each time, the result was the same: complete destruction of the enemy forces. Captain Danny Cooper led a rescue mission to a world where the Korthak had established a major slave camp. His destroyers provided cover while marine transports landed on the planet. Colonel Santos personally led the assault on the camp. What her soldiers found there made them furious. Thousands of beings from different species were kept in terrible conditions. Many were sick and starving. "Get medical teams down here now," Santos ordered, "and prepare transport ships. We're taking every single prisoner back to their home worlds." The freed slaves could not believe what was happening. For years they had suffered under Korthak rule. Now strange beings from a distant world had come to rescue them. One of the freed prisoners was a being called Nixtal from a species called the Vorians. He had been a slave for 10 years before the humans arrived. "Why did you come to help us?" he asked Santos through a translator. "We are not your people. This is not your war." Santos looked at the alien with gentle eyes. "It became our war the moment we heard that innocent people were suffering. That's what humans do. We protect those who cannot protect themselves." Word of human victories spread quickly through the galaxy. The Korthak Empire, which had seemed unstoppable for centuries, was falling apart. Their fleets were being destroyed faster than they could be replaced. More importantly, the species they had conquered were rising in rebellion. Knowing that Earth would support them, resistance movements attacked Korthak bases and freed more slaves. 6 months after the first battle at Zelani, the Korthak Empire ceased to exist. Their military was shattered, their leaders were dead or in hiding, and their former slaves were free. Admiral Hayes, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, established a permanent Earth base in the former Korthak capital system. The base would serve as headquarters for human peacekeeping forces in the region. Elder Thalvin of the Zelani came to visit Hayes at the new base. The old alien looked at the human with wonder. "Admiral, my people have a question that troubles us," Thalvin said. "You came from so far away to help people you had never met. You risked your lives for strangers. Why?" Hayes thought about the question for a moment. "Elder, humans evolved on a dangerous world. We learned that we must help each other to survive. When we heard your distress call, you became part of our community. That made protecting you our responsibility." The old Zelani nodded slowly. "And now you protect the entire region of space the same way." "That's right," Hayes said. "Earth is listening to the galaxy now. Anyone who preys on innocent people will find out what happens when they anger the Deathworlders." A monument was built on the Zelani homeworld to honor the humans who had answered their call for help. The inscription was written in dozens of languages from all the species. Earth had freed. It read simply, "When darkness fell and hope was lost, we called into the void." The Deathworlders answered with fury, and the galaxy was never the same. The age of Korthek terror was over. The age of human protection had begun.